Hello there, and welcome to Doctor Who Radio Show. I'm That's The Way It Goes 09, and this is
Slug Court.
And in this episode, we'll be reviewing the Doctor Who Christmas Special 2012, The Snowmen, as well as looking at what we think is possibly going to happen with both the new series, which will start showing in April 2013, and also the mystery of Clara Oswin. But first, the episode itself, The Snowmen.
Okay.
The first thing we need to talk about is the first thing in the episode itself. The brand new spanking title sequence.
Well, at first when I saw the title sequence for the first time, I was like, oh god, it's another one of those boring title sequences. But then it sort of, the tunnel, the time vortex, it opened up, and I see this whole galaxy and all that stuff, and that, I think that really captures the spirit of Doctor Who, because it's about him going everywhere. So why not have a title sequence that takes you everywhere, instead of just this one little time vortex that sort of wiggles around, and it's a tunnel, and, you know, I like it. I really do. What's your opinion on it?
Well, obviously, it still has the same theme tune, and basically from the get-go, the new series, they tweak this theme tune and even the titles a little bit here and there. Not anything really major until Matt Smith took over the role, when they completely changed it from simply a tunnel type thing, you know, flying through the tunnel, to flying through the same sort of tunnel but in a sort of cloudy type, you know, through the dust of space. But in this, it would seem as though the titles have slowly, with each year, you know, every several years, reverted to the classic type mode, because it's very much a measure of, I think personally, the 60s Doctors and also Tom Baker's type thing.
Well, also let's not forget the third Doctor.
Oh yeah.
Was it him who had his face appear in the stars? Or?
Well, when he took over the role, it went into colour, and when it came to his last season in 1974, instead of just having his face appear, you saw his face, and then his entire body sort of disappeared into the time tunnel. He's the first one to actually have the time tunnel, which became famous with the fourth Doctor.
Yes, well, we also see that with Matt Smith, except it's not like one of those cheesy things where you look back at it and it's like, okay, yeah, they're doing that thing again. Oh no, it's like they're saying, this is Matt Smith. He's better than the old ones. He kicks ass and everything. And then they might as well have like a Scarface thing going, say hello to my little Matt Smith.
It's still the same, you know, the big difference between the original 26 years of Doctor Who and the new series is, in essence, they went from what was done up to Saretta McCoy and basically borrowed from the McGann TV movie. That's where you first saw just the simple titles instead of a face. So instead of Paul McGann or Christopher Eccleston, etc's face, you had the titles in a sort of, well, there's this film called Superman 1 and 2, where you have the names of the actresses and actors sort of zooming towards you, and that's very much what they introduced in the Paul McGann TV movie. And quite simply, without the Paul McGann TV movie, you wouldn't have anything that you saw when Doctor Who returned in 2005, and that's where they borrowed from. So that TV movie, though it didn't lead to a proper series, was really like a sort of test almost, if you like. And that face, you know, was something that we all sort of wished would return, because really it's putting on a stamp on that era, you know. That's the only snag with the names. Anyone can have a sodding name. You can have a name at the bloody end of the episode. That's what they did in the classic series with Patrick Troughton and John Pertwee, Tom Baker, Peter Davison, Colin Baker, Sylvester McCoy. Each Doctor had one or two versions of the titles, but regardless, it was emphasising this is a story from this Doctor that you're seeing before you. In the William Hartnell era, you didn't have any of that, so the new series was sort of returning in a sense, to that sort of thing. Patrick Troughton was the last one to have black and white titles. John Pertwee had 2, of course. Tom Baker had 2. He had the famous tunnel sequence that is most well known by American fans.
Yeah.
And then of course he had the first Starfield sequence. And Sir Etta McCoy had the very first computer animated explosion, which is absolutely awesome when you first saw it. The and that had the TARDIS spinning once again, and then sort of the form of the then Doctor, Sir Etta McCoy. Seeing Matt Smith's face in the titles was heartwarming for me as a long-term fan since the dying days of the late 80s of Doctor Who. And my only criticism, everyone, is that it was so short-lived. I didn't feel like it'd been placed in the titles as predominantly as like the 80s. You'd see the face, the stars sort of forming, and then like that, sort of. You'd see the Doctor's face for quite a lot of seconds of what a 1 minute sort of title sequence at the beginning, and I don't know why we need the names of the companion there really, or even the Doctors, because they can be done at them. But it was heartwarming, and if any Doctor suits this face in the titles, retro, whatever you want to call it, Matt Smith does, because he has based his portrayal, oddly enough, on the very Doctor to have a face in the titles, the legendary, very much missed Patrick Troughton.
Let's talk about the Snowmen themselves, alright? Now, when we first see the Snowmen, well, we only see one. It's a snowman, and he isn't very menacing, really. He doesn't have a face, doesn't really pose any imminent threat. But then when those homeless people sort of say, "So, it's been a long day, we'd like some food," and then he said, "I'll feed you to the snowmen," and they're like, "Ah!" And then, then they become scary. And the reason I'm saying all this is because we haven't seen anything really scary in Doctor Who from Stephen Moffat since The Empty Child, okay? But with these snowmen, you see the teeth. You don't really see them, you don't directly see them killing anyone, but you hear them ripping apart flesh from bone, killing, destroying with their icicles.
Ah, yes.
And it's very
sort of more, less is more. The old sort of 50s and 60s Hitchcock, Roger Corman, by showing in the minds of people what they think's happening rather than actually showing them in front of them, it has a more bigger impact. And if characters and shite and fuck, if you create an image in the mind of the viewer, that has more power, and you can do it with lines of dialogue and the reactions of characters itself.
Well, yeah, that's basically what I'm trying to say with these snowmen. They're not really a threat at first.
No.
Just like The Empty Child in 2005. It wasn't really a threat. It was just a child with a gas mask. But then eventually we build up the climax of, oh my god, this thing can kill you.
Well, the idea, though, is that, as the Doctor points out to Oswin, the more you think of them, the more you fear them, the more it makes them grow larger.
In this case, literally, that is the case, because...
Psychic ice, basically, living ice. Very much like the Autons, sort of, in the sense that they thrive on the psychological fear and thoughts. It's a life form that can create itself in thy image, such as the old bag who used to look after the kids. You know, the fact that she was coming at the Doctor and the kids saying, I thought this was rather scary in a sort of odd way. You've been very naughty. Very naughty.
The last time we heard someone say that on Doctor Who, it was a couple of stupid robots, but now it's this menacing ice woman who's giving you the cold shoulder. Yeah,
yeah, it usually does, yeah. But they were very scary because they had big teeth. And that more like the Weeping Angels, really, you know, their appearance and the lack of knowledge about them made them more scary than, you know, some stupid Hollywood horror movie where you see everything, you know, shoved down your throat. So it loses all meaning by half an hour into the film.
Yeah, but this, as you said, is not the case. Stephen Moffat has really... He's put together all the monsters, if I might make this conclusion. The empty child, we see the Snowman is not a threat at first. The Weeping Angels, there's just snow until you turn your back. And the Vastra Narada, which is the fact that these things are many and they don't seem like much, they're just darkness, but then they get fangs and like devour you. So really Steven has done something very clever. He's combined all of his monsters.
Yes, I'll see what you mean. They all have one thing in common, in the sense that they're either innocuous, something they wouldn't normally pay attention to, or they're a threat when you don't realise they are. Weeping Angels, you know, the shadows, you know, you don't know where they're coming from. You're sort of not making them a threat priority wise, and that's what makes them dangerous.
Exactly.
A very old fashioned sort of horror idea, you know, like black and white movies from the 30s, you know, are far more scary for what you can't see and can't guess. You know, you're sort of looking around the building, seeing shadows, not knowing where the villain or the monster or the murderer is coming from. Yeah, and then BAM! Like that, you know, sort of thing. And that's... He was watching Doctor Who as a little kid when that was commonplace in Doctor Who, simply because you couldn't show lots and lots of blood. And to be terribly honest, it has so much more of effect when it's properly directed. I mean, there's so many things in Psycho, like I said about Hitchcock, that you don't see. I mean, the shower scene, you see some blood, but it's more the music that and the fact that as soon as you see it, you know, Norman Bates as his mum sort of disappears into the darkness once again as soon as he's appeared, and that's the whole point. It's all about shadows and what's going on in the corner of your eye with Stephen Moffat, you know, and that's applies in one way or the other with every single monster that he's ever created, even the Silence, you know, again, because of their very power over you to forget that they even existed. You go from knowing they're a threat to, well, not knowing. They're Weeping Angels, you know, if you blink for 1 second, that's it, they can get you.
Well, they are very clever, but what about that guy? You know the guy who I'm talking about. The guy who was originally a kid.
Ah, yes, Dr. Simeon. Well, he was very much like one of the previous Moffat Christmas specials in the sense that he's basically lost all his soul. Like, you know, the homeless people were thinking that they were going to get something to eat, and he makes this wonderful line. Oh, he points out, in essence, I said someone was getting to have something to eat. I didn't said who was going to be eaten, or something like that.
Well, yeah, something like that. Do you think it's cruel that he had such a foul end?
I beg your pardon? A bell
Well,
end?
I didn't mean it like that. I meant, do you think it's cruel that he met such a gruesome fate? The worm, and then the snow.
Well, he was manipulated from a child, and he's presumably been in service to this creature all his life. It's like the Chronoids and that weird, madman in the Tom Baker story, who is basically in the thrall of the Chronoids. That story, Terror of the Chronoids or whatever it's called. The Seeds of Doom. Is it the Seeds of Death? No, the Seeds of Death is the Ice Warriors. Seeds of Doom is the one I'm talking about. And he's basically had all his humanity taken away. He doesn't even blink. When he's no pun intended. Blink, get it?
Oh, I get it.
He doesn't blink at all when he's basically feeding the homeless people. He doesn't care. To him, they're just simply cannon fodder, quite literally.
Well, he kind of reminds me of that other villain. Now that I think about it, what's his face? Sebastian, or because of an S, he was a pirate stealing those dinosaurs.
Oh yeah, dinosaurs and a spaceship. The one who basically murdered those Silurians, and it's all a case of money. That's a good connection. But the thing with Dr. Simeon is basically he's become as cold as the ice that he loves. He seems to have a connection with them, and he's been investigated, of course, by Lady Vastra and Jenny, and also the butler, some Tauren warrior, Strax. What did you think of them in their place in the episode returning since A Good Man Goes to War?
Well, I thought it was very interesting. I didn't know they were lesbians. I didn't know that. And it was very interesting to see how all these characters who were once villains can be, well, they're anti-heroes now, I guess. I mean, I like them a lot, and I really enjoyed the Zontaran, because he sort of was clumsy and foolish, and I hope he can outgrow this as a character. I really do.
I think he was rather funny with the memory worm. I thought that was a wonderful scene.
Yes, I did as well.
But the problem I have with the Sontaran Warriors in the new series is that they're like comedy characters. If you compare them to the classic series Sontaran Warriors would have not have put up with any of this, working with the Doctor, and they certainly wouldn't have been fools. They were the complete opposite. They were architects, experts in technology, commanders of the warfield, even in the Sontaran experiment, scientists to a certain degree. And they weren't comedy characters at all. They would have quite happily have gone in there and just blasted, the great intelligence, yes, that great intelligence, to pieces.
It's very interesting how the Doctor always brings out the best in people. I know it sounds cheesy, but it's true. I mean, think about it.
Well, I thought with Lady Vastra that this felt a little bit weird, because on the one hand they were in effect guest characters, weren't they? But at the same time they were. It was almost like some sort of odd pilot for their own series. Because when they first appeared in A Good Man Goes to War, I thought that they should have their own series, because they're like the duo from the Talons of Wang Chiang, as I pointed out to Stephen Price in the last Doctor Who radio show. They were so good, and they fit that Victorian atmosphere perfectly. They slot in. So this episode didn't seem. At first they had something to do, and then they were sort of, obsolete. They seemed to be there for some boring gay propaganda, or some sort of desire to sort of, test the waters for a pilot. Because the simple fact is, everyone, you could have taken the Doctor out of that story completely. The TARDIS and even Oswin, and it would have worked quite perfectly with Lady Vastra, her wife, and the Sontaran warrior cum butler Strax. Or you could have done the other thing, taken them out, and it would have worked better. Because that's
but if you take them out,
they were confused with what they wanted to do, and then they stopped doing anything. They seemed to be there to just point out that the Doctor had basically gone back to William Hartnell's Doctor in An Unearthly Child, i.e. purposely trying to avoid getting involved in the venture.
Yes, indeed. Well, I think that Steven really wanted them to be in the story because we've seen so many stories with just a Doctor and a female companion, and he wanted to shake things up a little bit.
Oh, yes.
Like a snow globe.
Oh, yeah. Yes, of course. Everything sort of lifted upward and then sort of falls down in a different arrangement. I did notice there was a gigantic shift in style with this story. They've effectively done what they did at the end of Time and the beginning of the 11th Hour. Completely wiped the slate clean. No more ponds, so the whole format is different. And at the episode itself, you saw a Doctor, like I said, who was basically keeping himself to himself, to the point where he'd put the TARDIS on a big sort of magical staircase, which, let's face it, is the most extreme way of making sure nobody can accidentally wander into your TARDIS. And lo and behold, Oswin is able to do that just by sheer coincidence. And there's this implication, in the same way that there's a huge gap between the end of Trial of a Time Lord and the beginning of Time in Irani, a huge gap between Survival and the TV movie, and the TV movie and Rose. There's apparently he's been there for years and years and years, and apparently he's using a memory worm precisely because he's had so many women once again gravitating towards him and becoming near companions. He said as the coffee's seeped into his veins. Because that's the whole point. He's been there for so long. He says that himself. So there might have been an entire set of seasons where he was, unwillingly having adventures, and Vastra, Lady Vastra and her companions were sitting back watching him presumably allow the Earth to be damaged by alien invasions. Just imagine if the third Doctor had not once bothered to help UNIT, that sort of thing.
Yes. Also, I'd like to point out the Oswin mystery. Is it really... Steven has done something again. He's pulling a season 5 on us. Except it's a bit different this time. In season 5 we were all wondering, what's the crack in time? Is it a butt crack or what? No, I shouldn't say that. No. Yeah, but what's Steven doing? I mean, he's obviously trying to create this creative plot twist that's been happening since Asylum of the Daleks. And I think Oswin is the next Rory. She's the woman who can never die, instead of the guy who can simply die in a cave and then get swallowed by a crack and then come back.
She does die, but the difference here, and this has been shown already, is that she seems to be still alive in a different period of time.
Well, I've got a request for Stephen Moffat. Don't put Rose Tyler in this whole thing, because we've had enough of that blonde for a very long time. No pun intended. But really, I don't think we're going to be able to solve this mystery about Oswin reappearing. I think Steven is making it up as he goes along, and he is very good at doing this, actually. Very good at making things up as he goes along, and it's just the great unknown for now.
Well, I think what he's effectively doing, Moffat, is taking inspiration from the Doctor Who 4th Doctor story, The City of Death. In this story, you had Count Scarleone from the Jaggeroff. Yeah, that's what it was. The Jaggeroff. And at the start of the story, you see his spaceship going wrong, and he's splintered in time. So he exists in several different periods of time. The same person, but a different aspect. And I think that's what's happening with Oswin. She can't die in any time period because she exists in several at the same time. I mean, think about it. We've already seen her die in her first unexpected appearance, Asylum with Daleks. She dies in this Christmas special, and yet she's supposed to have existed somewhere else, which is shown by the coming soon, teaser. Yeah. And in City of Death, that's precisely what happens to the Count. He's existing after the explosion of his spaceship in different periods of Earth's history, and those different separate entities, who are actually the same being, are working together to raise funds to basically fund the various time travel experiments that caused the initial paradox to happen in the first place. I guarantee you that's where Moffat's got his idea from. Again, it's another 50th anniversary idea. A paradox.
Either that or
you're caught in a space-time paradox. Star Wars didn't start the war and explode the bombs. You did it yourselves.
Did you get that from Asylum of the Daleks?
No, that's Day of the Daleks, dude.
Oh, sorry. It sounded like something the Doctor would say to the Daleks. Anyway.
I mean, think about it. What does the Doctor do? He time travels. He's time travelled so many times, it's one big ball of timey-wimey. And quite literally, you have the same man, different incarnations, encountering people like William Shakespeare. He's existing in several different points in time as different men, even different versions of the same incarnation in the same time period. And there's supposed to be theories that Oswin, here we go again, maybe they're right this time, is actually a Time Lord. And here's another idea for you, which is a good question for you, Slug Corp. Which other character is able to survive death after being exposed to Time Lord energy?
Hang on. I know the answer. Is it River Song?
No. A certain captain who doesn't mind sleeping with anyone of any species.
It's John Barrowman.
Captain Jack. I mean, it just seems a little bit coincidental to me. And like I said, City of Death does have Count Scarleone, who's splintered in time, but it's all the same person. So maybe this is a very similar thing. She's a fixed point in time. She can't die because time is purposely preventing it.
Now that makes sense. That actually makes sense. But how was she able to get the pond thing right? Because the danger was in the pond. The old bag was in the pond.
Yeah.
But when she said pond, the one word that could get the Doctor motivated, it was a reference to Amy Pond.
The one word he didn't really want to hear so soon, did he? Unless it's been hundreds of years.
No, he didn't want to hear it, and she said it, and she must have some sort of connection with the silence. Okay, I'm sorry, folks. I'm sorry. I'm mentioning the silence to you, but guess what? This could work. What if the silence made people forget that she was dead, and then take her and bring her back to life?
How would you know about it then?
Oh, I actually forgot what I was going to say, but that's not important right now.
Well, I'd like to know your opinions, Slub Corp, on the brand new look TARDIS, which is smaller on the inside than the outside.
It's really big. I mean, when you look up, you know the thing that goes up and down, and don't get me the wrong way. When you look up from that, you can these gears turning, and everything's moving around, but there's only one problem with it, and the problem is all the levers look the same. I mean, they've all got these silver metallic levers, and they're not very unique. You know what I mean? It's like with the other Doctor's TARDIS, the one before this one, everything was different, but now we all have the same metallic feeling. Nothing is changing.
Well, as I pointed out in desperation with I Just Subscribe Now, two things which I discovered from Doctor Who magazine. Well, actually one, technically speaking. First off, one of the later, episode 3, 4 or something like that, next year, will be called Journey to the Centre of the TARDIS. So we're going... So maybe that's the whole point. Perhaps they've personally designed a more intimate TARDIS console room. But that picture where with Matt Smith holding his hands out in the TARDIS was deceptive, because the actual roof sort of rotates with Gallifreyan sort of navigation signs or something like that in the background, sort of data banks or something like that. Perhaps they control, I don't know, oxygen levels or something there, and it rotates. So unlike previous TARDISes, there's more movement in the TARDIS itself. So while it hasn't got the same size, it does have a more sort of alive feeling. It's not just simply a bunch of wires and metal, but actually a living, thriving machine.
Do you think they'll meet the Dream Lord or the Valyard down there?
I don't know.
I mean, we saw the Dream Lord's reflection in the TARDIS console. So, if we have a journey to the center of the TARDIS, will we be in a matrix, so to speak? Like the Matrix movies, with Keanu Reeves, where there's one superior being watching over everyone, and they'll have to defy it. And, I think, I have a prediction. In Journey of the Center of the TARDIS, I believe that the Dream Lord will play God, as in the Doctor will have to do whatever he says, and he will once again control the TARDIS, and House will reappear.
Well, I think Journey to the Centre of the TARDIS will be very much like the Jules Verne book, which it is basically a play on Journey to the Centre of the Earth. A dangerous journey into areas of the TARDIS, which is what happens to Jules Verne's novel, or rather the people, the characters in it, facing unknown threats. Because you see, a TARDIS, like the Doctor's, has been around for thousands of years. The likelihood is that he would have forgotten, certain areas. He would have deleted certain areas, like he did in Logopolis, or created some for purposes which he's long forgotten about, like several regenerations ago, which from his point of view are hundreds of years. And so, I don't know, perhaps he has a calamity, like in Casa Volva or something, and he has to travel into certain areas. Sort of like a key to time, except, a key to salvation and non-destruction of the TARDIS. Perhaps linked to the destruction of the TARDIS pictured in series 5, the implosion or something like that, I don't know. So he goes into fantastical areas, and the TARDIS, in theory, just like the Matrix in Trial of the Time Lord, and also of course in The Deadly Assassin, where it originates from, could in theory be anything. Maybe some parts of the TARDIS aren't friendly to the Doctor. Perhaps they're booby traps for the Solitarians in The Invasion of Time, which haven't been deactivated, like you have with bombs from the Second World War or something.
True, very true.
It is true. I am your Lord and Master. I am the King of YouTube and Doctor Who universe. Not you, Scribe. I am supreme.
I don't think you should say that.
Because
anyway,
I am not entirely stable.
Oh, I understand.
And with that bombshell, let's move on to something else. What did you think of Oswin Introduction Part 2?
Well, It was expected, seeing as they made an announcement that this would happen. I wasn't exactly shocked by it happening, seeing as Moffat has done this before. He's reintroduced characters before. But I'm worried for Oswin. I'm worried she's going to become the next Rose Tyler.
Why do you say that? In what sense?
I mean, let's look at it this way. Season 1 of the new series in 2005 was all about Rose. The first episode was called Rose. Season 2 was all about Rose getting used to David Tennant and his very tall appearance. Season 3 was about getting Rose back, and Season 4 was about getting rid of Rose. So, really, with this Oswin thing, it could drag out for the rest of the entire series, for the rest of the entire era of Doctor Who, because this is going to be the last season of Doctor Who.
So,
until someone...
Basically, you're worried that she might, like I got a bit annoyed with it, keep coming back in again and again.
Yes.
Well, I think that's...
What do you think?
Well, I think the opposite is the River Song thing. I think the River Song thing should have been stretched out throughout Matt Smith's era, really. So, Rose Tyler and Oswin, as you fear, could be the opposite. Involved to the point that overstays its welcome, not just to the viewers, or at least some of them, but also the narrative becomes a wilted rose.
You know what I want to see? I want to see the Doctor forced to kill Oswin. That would be a really big twist. You know what I mean?
Well, I get the impression that every episode she appears in might be a different Oswin, quite literally. Like, there was this idea that for the 50th anniversary they'd have special episodes featuring a different Doctor. But I think it's the opposite. I think she's going to be re-encountered every single time, and at some point in the episode she's going to die. Because she's already done it. She's already done it twice, technically. So Oswin is basically a City of Death type splintered being. She's not a Time Lord, because if she was, she would have regenerated, at the end of the last two deaths, if you like. And she must be herself a mystery. Well, she is. So instead of, like Big Wolf, little clues being left here and there, the clues is right in front of the Doctor. And, maybe Oswin has been put there by time and the universe to tempt the Doctor out of retirement. Give him a irresistible mystery so juicy and tempting that he has to run after her. The last thing he said, "See me run." This time he's not running away from something, but rather running towards something, i.e. Oswin and the conclusion to, what Oswin is or who, etc. Who. So anyway, we've talked enough about the episode. I give it 8 out of 10. Some flaws here and there, but a really atmospheric rebirth, if you like, of Doctor Who and the Matt Smith era. And what do you think before we talk about what we expect in the next season of Doctor Who?
I give it a 10 out of 10 for its unexpectedness, its drama, and for being violent and gorish and horrible. And
then at the end, of course, you have a teaser trailer for the 2013 season, the 8 episodes, and then of course the 50th anniversary story, which actually is being filmed when the 2013 series starts showing on British television. We know that the Cybermen are returning, revamped, and finally they don't look like those stupid iPod on legs, but are more sort of, do you think these Cybermen that are going to appear are going to be our universe Cybermen returning?
I don't know. I have no idea. But one last thing. in Attack of the Cybermen, they were bloody, vicious, and they were in fact so violent that they couldn't be aired on the BBC. Do you think we are going to get those kind of Cybermen back?
In Age of Steel Rise of the Cybermen, you have alternative reality Cybermen, and the Doctor says that our universe Cybermen, the ones that originate from our reality, are still out there. So I think these are the ones that we're going to see in the new Cybermen story. They've been designed so they're less sort of, iPod-y, and more sort of men in costumes, more sort of the original concept of the Cybermen. They replaced their body parts to the point that they became nothing more than, metal men, really. And there's other stories with some rather interesting monsters that I've seen in that teaser. But the one thing that makes me curious, there's this very brief clip of what appear to be monks. One monk is in front of a portrait of Oswin herself, and then the other monk has his back to the camera. Could that possibly be another Time Lord? There's been talk of the Master coming back, possibly, but I find it interesting that that character has his back to the camera.
I think it is. I think it's Darwin.
Or perhaps it's the first Doctor. You never know.
Well, wouldn't it be a shame if they got someone to act like the first Doctor? I mean, they might as well bring back the character of Susan if they're going to bring back the very first Doctor,
Oh, damn right.
And when is the Doctor ever going to pick up Susan? I mean, come on. Really?
I think this whole season will have some surprises which will be kept under wraps, because we don't really know that much about it. But I seriously do think that the events of this season will link into the 50th anniversary, and Oswin will be the major, recurring mystery.
Yes, indeed. Well, I can't wait to rant about it.
We can only really sort of say any more when more details start to come out. So between January 2013 and April 2013, we'll get more and more details. Then April of 2013, the 50th anniversary season will be broadcast, and the 50th anniversary special will be filmed. And I'm sure Stephen Price will be quite happy to go down there and spot some rather suspiciously looking past Doctors dressed by sheer coincidence as they used to be back in the day.
Yeah, well, that's all for now, folks, and we'll see you next time.
And I'm That's the Way It Goes 09. Thank you for joining. Goodbye.